We're really happy to have all of you here joining us. This is our first global education outreach event, our first GEO. So this is an exciting event for us, and we're happy to have a great audience of people from all around the world joining us here in Zoom. And we've got this going out on live stream on our YouTube channel and Facebook channels as well. So this is very exciting. The global educational outreach events are remote events that are connected to the in-person clinics and masterclasses we're going to be doing in the coming months. So the first stop on our global trip this year is going to be to Bangkok, Thailand, where we're going to be visiting the Siam Yamaha Music headquarters, our partners there in Bangkok, and you know, the clinics and master classes that we're going to present today and in the next couple of weeks are going to tie into the master classes that we're going to do in person. So we're hoping that you'll join us for these sessions here remotely, and that we'll also see you in person in Bangkok and we can play some music together. Joining me today are my colleagues, Assistant Director for Global Enrollment Initiatives, Bree Tagliaferro. As you can see, she's a cellist. She's an incredible musician, graduate of the Boston Conservatory of Music, and touring and recording artist. And also we have Kristalis Sotomayor. And Kristalis, as you can see, is a flutist. She is an incredible musician as well. She studied at Berklee as an undergrad student, but also is now a graduate student at the Boston Conservatory of Music. Off screen right now, we have our Associate Director of Global Enrollment Initiatives, Daniel Abusey. Daniel's a guitarist and composer and songwriter. So you've got a great team of people connecting with you today. Before we go on, I just want to go over some Zoom rules for everybody that are here in the Zoom session. Zoom rules apply. We're going to do a presentation first, and we're going to be sharing some information with you. We have a special guest with us here today, a Berklee alum and incredible artist. I'll introduce him in a moment. Keep yourself muted. We are recording the session so that there's a lot of great information here. So you're going to be able to go back and check this out. We're going to have it up on our YouTube page in the coming week. So you'll be able to come back and take a look and listen to all this great information that we have, that we're sharing, and also connect to the links, because we're going to be sharing some links to different materials that you'll be able to use to help you with optimizing your practice and helping you to prepare for an audition. All right. Looking through the list here and seeing, you know, ladies and gentlemen, it'd be really cool if you could tell us in the chat, what instrument do you play? Or if you play multiple instruments, that would be cool. And where are you from? It'd be really cool to know, you know, where you're connecting from. Yeah, so please add that into the in the chat. I'll start. I'm a trombonist and guitarist, and yeah, cool. Yeah, Vancouver, awesome, very nice. From pianist from China, wonderful. Yeah, throw that information in there. Piano from India, wonderful. Iran. Oh, Ali, that's right. Ali Arshi connected with me last night to tell me that you're going to be joining us. And he actually auditioned with us in Bangkok the last time we were there. And he's currently at Berklee now. So wonderful. Yeah, add that in there. Great. Oh my God. Cleveland, Abigail, thanks for getting up so early. This is great. Yeah, for those of us here in Boston, it's bright and early on Saturday morning. Wonderful. Okay, so to jump in, I really I want to introduce somebody really special. You see him off screen here. He is a native of Thailand. He graduated from the prestigious Silpakorn University with a degree in violin, and then he came on and studied with us at Berklee in Boston, where he was a well and highly sought after violinist. He has performed all over the world, from Thailand to Singapore, Malaysia, the Netherlands, France, across the United States, with everybody from Jacob Collier and David Fusinski and Dennis Montgomery to other incredible renowned artists, and studied with people like John Patitucci, Terry Lynn Carrington, Adam Cruz, Anat Cohen, so many more. He is a really, really stellar violinist, contemporary musician, as well as covering many, many, many genres. He also performed at the Newport, Folk Festival with Suzanne Vega and Daryl Anger. So two incredible musicians. I love them both. Suzanne and Daryl are fantastic. So Volt, thanks for joining us, sir.
Hello, Jason. Thank you so much for your introduction. What a great Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Volt Vichapanjingjit. I'm from Thailand. I was a Berklee graduate from 2019, I think. No, 18. So happy to be here.
Yeah, man. And I actually have another person that's here that we'll bring on screen. Our dear friend Atapong is here from Siam Yamaha, and maybe we can bring him in to at some point as well. We're very, very, very fortunate to be working with our partners at Siam Music Yamaha in Thailand. They've been great connectors for us over the past few years, and we're really looking forward to being with them later this month. We're going to be in Thailand. I think we get there on the 1st of December, actually, and we're going to be there for a few days doing clinics, master classes, and auditions. We'll talk about that later, but Gap, thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you so much, Jason. Hi, nice from Bangkok.
Cool. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Bree, to kick us off and get into our presentation for today.
Sure.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jason. And thank you everybody from around the world that's joining us. This is, at least since it's so early in Boston, this is a great way to start the day. And hopefully whatever time it is where you're joining us at a great time. So I want to give a little overview of what we're going to talk about in this session. We're going to talk about practicing and also performing, doing auditions, and some tips for all of those kind of things. Practicing can be one of those things where it comes really naturally, but for some folks, it can be a little bit tougher. And I might be actually one of those folks where I need a little bit more guidance and structure in my practicing. So we're going to talk about why do we practice and like what do we want to accomplish with our practicing. We're going to talk a little bit about different practice routines, and we also want to hear from you. So we're going to open it up in a little bit to hear from folks joining. What are your practice routines like? What do you do that helps you? We're going to give some resources for optimizing your practice, maybe give you some tips, help make your practice more effective. Then we're going to talk about auditions and live performances, kind of talk through those processes and help you do the best that you can at both of those. And then at the end, we'll offer some time for some questions. So let's jump right in. So why do we practice? So there's so many reasons that you might practice at your instrument or with your voice, to get better, to gain certain abilities and knowledge with your voice or on your instrument that you want to gain. So whether you want to learn a new song, whether you want to be closer to someone that's like your mentor, that you want to be like them, you want to perform like they perform, you might want to get a different opportunity like a band or an audition. We practice to set goals, to achieve these goals, whether it's auditioning for an orchestra, getting ready for a show, trying to memorize a new piece of music. Maybe even you want to become a better teacher and your practicing helps you with that. So actually, Volt, while we have you here as our guest, I'd love to ask you about your practicing and if you could give us some insight onto how you practice and why.
All right. So for me, I focus on three areas first. Because I'm a violinist and for a string instrument we have to deal with the intonation all the time. We have to deal with the tone all the time, and we have to deal with the rhythmic all the time. So actually, this three is like main three things that every instrument need to work on it as well: intonation, tone, and rhythmic. So when I start to practice in my daily routine, I would start with something that like bring my ability from yesterday, that that's what I sleep in, so like when I wake up and I practice something, I want to wake up my finger, my my muscle first. So I always start with a warming up, and then after that I set a goal for each day, like okay, today I'm gonna work on this, but I'm gonna work on one subject per each rehearsal, per each my practice session, because like if we focus on a different thing at the same time, I mean it could work, but not that very effortlessly like we focus on just only one thing. So for me, yeah, that's kind of thing that like I'm trying to like work on with myself, and never forget about that three things: intonation, tone, and rhythmic, and always practice with the metronome.
Oh yeah, that is so important, and not always the most fun, but so important, especially if you're going to be playing with other people, if you're going to be doing recording or session work, like you got to be able to play to that metronome. And
That's
especially,
right.
yeah, and as string players, since you're a violinist, I'm a cellist, that tone, intonation, articulation, all those qualities are so important for us to get a good sound, no matter what you're playing.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, Volt.
You're welcome.
So we want to open it up to hear from everybody that's joining us. How do you practice? If you would put your answer in the chat, we'd like to hear about your practice routine. Do you do it based on how much time you have? Do you practice every day?
Yeah, and if you want to raise your Zoom hand and come on and share your practice routine, we'd be happy to bring you into the session and hear your thoughts. Gap, you're one of the educators at the Siam Yamaha headquarters there in Bangkok. Do you have any insights for us based on the kinds of work you do as a vocalist and as a pianist?
In my opinion, I think my routine practice is like when I'm playing sport. It's not too much, but I do it every day, and I set everything in a minute. How long is it, and what I'm gonna do today, and what point for today. That's my routine practice every day.
Cool. So you have a regular daily practice schedule that you try to keep a certain amount of time going so you can keep your skills up?
Yeah, but I don't do it too much, like like 10 hours or 5 hours per day, but I set up like sometimes it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but I make a point of it, what I'm going to do today, what my goal for today, and I gonna finish my goal, something like that.
Nice. Yeah. So goal-oriented practice is definitely a good thing. We have Ali Reza here. Ali, you want to unmute yourself and share your thoughts on practice? Ali Reza, I see you there. We're going to add you to the spotlight. Hey, Ali.
Hey, how are you, Jason?
Doing well. Thank you for connecting. Yeah.
I'm glad to see you. Thank you much. Hello to everyone. I want to talk about my routine, my practice routine. I start my day by practicing solfeggio because I think one of the most important options and materials for these audition is sight reading. That I hear from many of Berklee alumni and students that the sight reading is one of the most important. So I start my day by practicing solfeggio. I try to read the rhythm, the intervals, melodies, and another one I start my day to practice is to ear training. I use some applications for hearing the intervals, to hearing the rhythm, to hearing the chords and its qualities. And another one I really interested in, and I have to start my day and I should use it in my practice routine, is to play a little jazz with my Iranian instrument. And it's really funny for me because I have the jazz and blues chord progression, so I have to play Western music with an Eastern acoustic string instrument. And it's a little fun for me because I can
Up, I think Ali, your connection is dropping, but that's okay. Ali is connecting, I think, with us from Iran, which is wonderful. But Ali, thank you for sharing that. Hopefully you're still connected, and we're going to move on to the next part of the presentation. All right. So take it away, Bree. Bree, did you want to move forward here?
Yeah, totally. So
Oh, this is
we
me. Okay,
would,
sorry, I didn't read the bottom of the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, we had this practiced, so I didn't read the
Speaking of-
bottom of the slide. Okay, so this is me. Yeah, so how to practice effectively. So ladies and gentlemen, we did a lot of research, Bree and Kristalis and I, and we looked through all of the great information that we have on Berklee's website. And we actually have a lot of cool stuff. And we actually have free content on our website that could help you with your practice. And we're going to play, I think we can play a little bit of this video. This is Professor Leo Blanco from our piano department. Leo's from Venezuela. He's a Berklee alum as well. And he does a fantastic online lesson on how to practice. So let's see, Bree, do you think we could share that video?
Yeah, definitely. Let me
Sorry
just.
about that. I dropped the ball on the handoff there. So yeah, let's take a look. And Leo's going to talk. Oh, there we go. Nice. So this is the website, Planning an Effective Practice Routine. And let's hear a little bit about what Leo has to say.
You probably didn't get into music because you love practicing, but rather because you love making music and the feeling, the experience of making it by having the keys at the end of your fingertips, right? But soon enough, if you continue into music, you will discover the urge to get better and better every time. And for this, there's no other way but practicing. In this video, you're going to explore the benefits of practicing versus just playing for fun, and how to organize your practicing by notating and organizing your session through a journal. Okay, let's talk about goals. In every serious task you engage to, we need to set up some goals. It could be, for example, be a part of an orchestra, be a band member of your favorite rock band, or teach music later in life. But for this, we need to set up two types of goals: long-term goals and short-term goals. The short-term goals are goals that you can achieve in 1 or 2 practice sessions, the most, and will help you to succeed achieving your long-term goals. On the other hand, long-term goals are achieved in a larger scale of time. It could vary from a week or a month, and it will be achieved by being disciplined in your short-term goals. For example, let's say that your long terms is to learn all major and minor scales in 12 keys by 90 beats per minute. Then your short terms should be learn 2 scales every day, that's to say every practice session, at 75 beats per minute. Another example of long-term goals could be, for example, to learn a new classical piece. Then your short-term goal should be to memorize 8 bars of this piece every time you sit down to practice. Also, another long-term goal could be to learn a jazz standard every week. Then your short-term goals should be every session you sit at the piano to learn just the harmony by memory, then separately just the melody, and then the structure of the form. A series of successful practice sessions is called effective practice. Now, when is a practice session considered successful? When you achieve your short-term goals and your long-term goals. On the other hand, an unsuccessful practice session is when you are not able to succeed on your short-term goals. Most likely, this occurred by distraction. Checking your social media, checking the phone, getting up to get a snack. There are a million reasons why you can get distracted in your practice session. Be smart by being disciplined, because this will make you a better player at the long run. Although it's very tempting to just sit at the piano and play for fun, but try to separate that part from just practicing and doing your warm-up and sticking to the plan. That's the most important. One of the key points of not getting distracted during your practice session is have everything you need at the moment you sit at the piano to practice. That is, your very important, your music journal, your music sheets, right? Even water, right? Your phone, if you need to use any app from it, but put it in an airplane so you avoid any calls and distraction. Remember, the habits you establish during your practice session will translate into your musicianship. As a pianist, it is very important to me to practice all the time in an instrument that is as close as possible to the instrument I will perform in a stage, like a grand piano. A great example is this Casio Silviano Grand Hybrid. It has many elements of the grand piano: the touch, the feel of the keys, the sustain pedal, and many other features. Okay, so let's get back to the practice time. It is very important to set up the frequency of your practice time and the length. More important than just sit every day and practice randomly, we need to stick to a plan. If you are going to practice 1 hour every practice session, let's divide it into 20 minutes of technique, including warm-up, 25 minutes of repertoire where you'll learn every song, any song you're learning at the time, and 15 minutes of free playing. All these activities should support your short and long-term goals. A practice journal is a very important tool of our practicing. It will keep us measuring our progress. It prevents you to wasting time. It helps you to pick up where we left it in the last session, and it provides a plan where we can measure all the time. A practice journal can be of different shapes. It can be a notebook where you write down your progress. It can be something in any of your devices, as your phone or your tablet. The important thing is you be consistent of what it is, and you always keep it with you at the piano when you practice. Here is a good example of a pulse practice journal for 1 week. Each practice session should include the following notes: date of your practice session, goals you are working to achieve, the techniques you work on, and all of the details, such as what scales and what tempo, the repertoire you work on, including a list of songs and or measures you work on in that session, and your reflections, how you feel during the session and what things need to be improved, and very important, your accomplishments. So in this video, we talk about the importance of practicing, how to organize it, and how it differs from just playing for fun or jamming. And we're just touching the surface of it. We'll continue with more techniques of this in the future videos. One important resource I would recommend you is to use the Berklee Pulse page. There you can find a lot of resources, worksheets, play-alongs, different techniques to improve your practice session and to improve your performance. In the next video, we're going to start talking about the technique aspect of practice session. For example, practicing articulations, dynamics, etc. But we're also going to start playing for fun. But remember, the most important thing here is that you stick to your plan and you will be amazed of how much you can improve.
Yeah, that was great. Very, very helpful presentation. And again, available on Berklee's website, and we'll share that with you. A really cool thing to note about Berklee is, and I think this is true across the campus, and I know it's true in my office, every department across the campus has Yamaha grand or baby grand pianos in them, especially in the piano department, all the ensemble rooms and in our studios. So it's really wonderful. We have this wonderful instruments all around campus. So if you're looking to come and study with us, you're going to be very happy, especially as a pianist or as a composer or somebody that needs to work on your piano skills, to be working with those wonderful instruments. And you know, Bree, you and Kristalis and I noted this. So Kristalis, you want to kind of like talk about all these different, you know, you have a sense of like, do we miss anything on this list, Kristalis? What else could we add to the things that you practice?
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do in my practice too.
Great.
So I'm a flutist. So I'm on the woodwind family. And I do a lot of things. I do breathing exercises. I need to do my warm-ups. And as everybody in any instrument, we have to do scales and all of that. So I basically start my practice actually by stretching my back, throat, face, embouchure, like my mouth, and then my fingers, and then, just stretching out so that we get ready and we get our body ready. And then I like to start by like doing long notes so that we can get a good intonation, also with my tuner. And I actually have a really fun breathing exercise with this. I don't know if you're looking at it. And I think Jason do this because he's a trombonist. So this is a breathing exercise that is good to like gain more, I don't know, like pulmonary capacity. So I do that for like 5 minutes, and then I start doing my low notes. And then I start by doing technique, which here I use scales in different articulations. And then I do, we have a book as a fluteist that it's called Tafanel Gaubert for those who are flutists in here. And if you're a flutist, please send that in the chat. I want to know how many flutists we have here, if we have one. So yeah, and then I started by doing a lot of technique, which is my favorite thing in the practice. I don't know why, but I love it. And then I get to the fun stuff, which is the pieces. If I'm working on a piece, I start by doing it from the beginning to the end. And then I remember what I did wrong or what I think I need more help with, or even cheering up when I do something good. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks. That's great to hear. So it sounds like your routine is very similar to what we've heard from Volt and Gap
Yeah.
and Leo, which
Yeah.
is really, the warm-up piece is really important, the stretching and the breathing, and then having that intensive focus session where you're going to work on whatever your goals are for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But these are things that, we were sitting together. These are all areas that each of us musically needs to work on at some point in time. Bree, did we miss any that you can think of? Or ladies and gentlemen in the chat, you can add things as well if there's other things that we can add to our array of topics. Cool. All right.
Yeah, I think we hit on a lot of the really important things that you want to think about when you're practicing. There's so many things to consider. So I know for me, it really helps when I write something down, just like Leo was saying in that video we just watched. With so much technology, I get really easily distracted if I have my phone right there. So I make a real effort to use a notebook to write down everything I'm practicing, rather than using my phone as a distraction. And I think that ties in with just summing up our best practices for practicing effectively. So setting goals, both long and short term, coming up with a routine that works for you. Like Kristalis just mentioned, her routine that works for her. How long did it take you to really get used to that routine?
I've been practicing since I was 4 years old. And I think I kept that routine. And also my dad is a great saxophonist. He played with many Latino and Latin Grammy winner players. So he taught me, and he had that same routine. So I took it since I was a child and kept it till now.
Wow, that's great. So you got an early start when it's someone really good.
I did.
You out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what works for one person might not work for everybody. So it's really important to figure out what helps you practice the best, what tools help you stay focused. And so these are just some ideas. Maybe some of them will help you. Starting a practice journal, as we talked about, can be great. Getting a comfortable space where you can practice, where you go there during your daily practice time. There's no distractions, no siblings coming in and knocking on the door, trying to hang out while you're in the middle of your practicing. I know that was a big thing for me growing up. Just getting that dedicated space if you can. And also learning about the music that you're playing. So the history of it, the background of the songwriter or the composer, when it was it written a few years ago, or was it written maybe over 200 years ago? Because, we've played some of these classical pieces that are written hundreds of years ago. So that might help you when you're practicing, thinking about all those different factors. of the music. So Jason, did you have any other tips for us on effective practicing?
Yeah, some things that we should all remember is that you don't always have to be at your instrument when you practice, right? You can practice away from your instrument. You can, work on things in your head, or you can do, finger exercises if you're a pianist or a guitarist, or if you're a drummer, percussionist, things like that. I know I play air trombone sometimes, which helps me to sort of mentally exercise what I'm working on. And we also have to remember that listening to music is a form of practice, and listening in a critical way where you're really focused on the different styles and genres of music you're listening to, the artists that you're listening to, can be really, really beneficial. Obviously, we all love and we want to enjoy what we're listening to, but sometimes critical listening can be really, really helpful too, because you're listening to those nuances of the music, the dynamics, the phrasing, the rhythm, the groove, the articulation, all of those things that our favorite artists do that we want to copy. And in the immortal sort of words of Clark Terry, the renowned trumpeter educator, we're all trying to imitate first. We want to imitate the best music we can. And then we try to combine all that music together. We try to assimilate it and put the different styles and sounds together and techniques together. And eventually we develop our own sound. And that process takes many, many years to do. So while we're all looking for the easy answer, the quick solution to learning music, we have to remember that it's a long journey and that we should really just enjoy it, because we get to play music and it's fun. So, be patient with yourself, and really, really, find different ways that work best for you, and take a look at the resources. I think we have some information to share next, right, Bree?
We do.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you could scan these using your phone's camera. These will take you to some practice resources that we think would be really helpful for anyone to have access to. So the first link is a guide on practice tips. A lot of the things that were mentioned in that video we saw are kind of mentioned in this as well, and they're expanded upon. So giving just a little bit more description on the different aspects of creating a practice routine. And the second document is another lesson from that same professor at Berklee, getting more into practicing technique. So there are actually 5 total videos and lessons in that series. So that's the second one. You can also get the rest of them by clicking through to that link or taking the picture with your phone's camera. It'll send you right to that page. So I would definitely recommend scanning for both of these different resources, save them, take a look at them later, or if there's ever a time when you feel stuck in your practice, there's some great resources to look at. So now we'd love to answer any questions about practicing that anyone might have. You can put your question in the chat or feel free to raise your hand.
Ooh, Yu Chang has got a question. So what's your advice for how to practice ear training and sight reading? Kristalis and Bree, and even Gap, if you're here, you can chime in as well. Any thoughts on your approach to practicing? I have some ideas, but what are your thoughts on how do you work on ear training?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. I remember when I was practicing for my college auditions, I used to practice ear training every week, mostly by sitting at the piano and kind of playing through different intervals. And then I actually had somebody else help me with it. So after I felt like I got pretty good at hearing intervals and some basic ear training on the piano, I would get someone else to help me play, and then I would try to write things down. I would try to respond to what they were playing on piano, and I would try to identify different things. So that was really helpful for me.
Excellent. Yeah. So actually sitting at the piano, you're a cellist.
Mhm.
You actually sat down at the piano to work on sing. Did you play and then sing? Is that how you worked on it?
Yeah, definitely. So I would do some singing along. The piano was really helpful for me because you can just really see how everything's laid out, where it's a little trickier on cello.
Mhm.
How about you, Kristalis?
Yeah, the same thing. And I'm gonna use my dad a lot because he was the one who taught me everything. But he will sit in the piano and I will like, he will like, okay, what interval is this? What note is this? And since I was small to now, that's how I've been training my ear training. And I think there are many good apps too that you can like get play it and then it will play a interval and then it's like a quiz type of app and then it will help you a lot to get that, which is very important for the next part for the audition ear training.
Right, exactly.
And
The
yeah.
apps. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say the sight reading. You mean like first sight reading, like
I
sight
think it's
reading?
just. I would say, let's answer that question in the as far as like reading literacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm,
Being able to be a literate reader, being able to, when somebody presents you with a piece of music, that you feel comfortable reading it.
exactly. Good.
Yeah, I think for ear
Yeah.
training, one of the things that I've worked on is transcribing. So a lot of times, m- whether it's on guitar or on trombone, listening to recordings of songs that I need to memorize, because I need to be efficient. Remember, we're talking about optimizing practice. So we only have a limited amount of time. And a lot of times I try to combine my practice routines together. So if I need to learn some music, I can practice my ear training while I'm transcribing. So if I need to learn a trombone part, I can listen to that recording and work it out. And what I find is that um, singing along with the tracks and vocalizing first is always a great start, no matter what your instrument is. If you can sing it, then you can get that reference point. The next thing I like to do is then work out the rhythmic pattern first. So, you can go for the notes first, or you can go for the rhythms. Typically, I like to figure out the rhythmic pattern. What's the pulse? What's the beat? Is it in a standard, time signature, or is it in a maybe an odd time signature or something more complex? And then once I get that rhythmic pattern working out, then I start to figure out the pitches, and I get them matched on my horn or on my guitar. And over time, what I found is that it's just compound skill, like doing that even a few times a week, working that into my practice session, doing 4 measures of a song, 8 measures of a song, just a verse or a chorus or the bridge or something like that. I've found over time that my relative hearing, ear training, has improved greatly. So I recommend that, if you haven't tried to listen to a recording and copy what's on the recording on your instrument or on your voice, that would be something that you might want to try. As far as reading goes, as you can see, I always have music on my stand, and I'm always working on reading. It's just a daily part of the routine that I do. And I like to read on different instruments. So I might take trombone music and read it on my guitar, or I might take, piano music and read it on the bass. It's just sort of always working on a 4-measure phrase, an 8-measure phrase, a whole section of a song, and working through it slowly and doing it at sight, like reading music that's fresh that I haven't seen before, and going through the process of problem solving. What's the key signature? What's the time signature? What's the tempo, the dynamics, the articulation? And if you even start with a couple of measures, you'll find that over a few weeks of time of even doing it for 10 minutes in your practice session, you're going to get more and more confident because you're going to be more familiar with reading music. So again, patience and consistency will probably be things that will serve you really well over time, so that when you do walk into a recording session or a live performance or an audition, you'll find that you might be a lot more comfortable with what you're being presented.
Totally. Wow, thank you for that great advice, Jason. We actually had a question about improvisation. So if there's any tips or advice, Kristalis or Jason, for improv.
Kristalis, how have you worked on improvisation? Because your background has been in many different genres, but primarily,
Mhm.
you came from a classical tradition, but also you're a fantastic improviser. How do you work on improvisation?
So when I get a piece of paper and I get a lot of chord changes, what I do is I go by the leading notes, like really easy, just one note, and then go each chord, like, I don't know, the first, like the tonic. And then I start by adding some scales and slowly, I just go slowly. And then I try to think about like I'm having a conversation with my instrument, and I start like, it's like composing a melody. And let's just start by composing a melody that with some arpeggios, with some scales, with this articulation here, so it sounds a little bit different. That's how I visualize it, and that's how I do it. I'm more of a, okay, I get the piece of paper, I'm here with the ensemble, then I'll just do it. But when I practice, that's what I do. I just take it piece by piece, like, okay, let's just start with one note. Then let's add another note. Let's add arpeggios. Let's add this type of scale. So I think that's why scales are very important, because they can be used in many ways.
Yeah, so it sounds like that sounds like a big deal. It's sort of like having vocabulary is a big start.
Yeah.
So you needed to really, like, because it kind of answers Abigail's question, actually, so Jimmy's question about learning things in all keys.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
keys, learning things in different keys is really, really critical. You have to be comfortable. So the the keys that are unfamiliar, you have to make them familiar. So
Yeah.
this goes back to practicing. You really have to kind of, when you set your goals, like today, I'm going to work in the key of G flat, because that's the key that on trombone for me is
Mhm.
really kind of hard. It's kind of like in a different space. It's much more challenging and less familiar than the key of F or the key of E flat. So you kind of got to focus on that. But then as you build your vocabulary with all these scales and the arpeggios, when you do what you say, which is to find those common tones and the guide tone lines between the chords, then it's going to be easier for you to build those melodies. Is that right?
Mhm. Correct.
Cool. Let's see. There's a few more really good questions here. Let's see. I focus on pieces of songs. If I don't know them one first, that's from Joseph. And he works on the transitions and he tries to run through the song. That's a great, I mean, deconstructing your practice and going to the smallest
Mhm.
part that you can't do and then building out from there, instead of going through the whole piece time after time and making the same mistake over. You end up reinforcing the mistakes, right? So what you want to do is go back and work on that little piece and then kind of build out from the little piece, to get the whole song together. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And we had a question from Abigail. Do you work on
Yeah.
the same piece of each song in every session? Focus the entire session on just one song or piece?
So can I add something to that?
Yeah, please go
So
for it.
now, as a student at, obviously I was a student at Berklee, and now as a vocal student, personally in classical, we need to learn more, like more pieces at the same time, because, oh, here's a competition you need to work on, or this, you need to prepare your recital or something. So I'm actually now working in like 4 different songs, pieces, and also orchestra pieces, and also chamber music pieces. So what I do on my practice is I try to do every piece, like I try to play them from the beginning to the end, and then what I mean is that I try to cover every piece in each time that I'm practicing, because I think it's very important, and just like take it slow and practice each piece, with patience. But I think it's good to get the material going, because if I don't practice one piece and then I go incomplete to my class, I feel like I didn't do well. So what I try is to like practice every piece, focus on what I did wrong and try to remember that, and also make notes in my journal, like, okay, so in this piece I need to get better at this, and then I go to the other one, and then after I finish with playing all of them from the beginning to the end, then I start working on them. I don't know, that works for me. It might work for you, it might not. You might have another idea on doing that, but that's how I do it.
Bree, do you have when you're presented with new repertoire, how do you attack it? How do you work on it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always start by looking through the whole piece without the cello, like just looking through the music, if it's of sheet music. highlighting out like what are the hardest parts that I'm going to have to spend the most time on, especially if it's a gig with a chamber music group, an orchestra, you know, those pieces are long. So it doesn't really make too much sense to play through the whole piece. It could be 20, 30 minutes or more. So I really like to highlight those difficult passages that I'm going to need to spend the most time on and really hone in on those when I'm practicing. And the rest I'll touch on once in a while, but I really try to find what needs the most attention and then kind of move between those different parts to keep myself really engaged with the music.
Right. That's a good approach, is to scan the piece of music, find those pain points, as we call them, the difficult passages, and work those out. That's a great approach. I like that. There's so many different approaches. I did want to share that, you know, ladies and gentlemen, there's a great website with free content also for learning on Coursera.org. And I just threw the link in the chat. And I also put the lesson for improvisation that Gary Burton adds that he presented, the renowned vibraphonist and composer and educator. So if you haven't checked out Coursera, that's another great place to kind of get some new material to learn and to kind of work into your routines. I'm mindful of time. I think we should probably move on in the presentation to how do you, you know, this idea of auditioning. So let's, shall we jump to the next session there, Bree?
Yeah, let's do it. So now, building on all that advice about practicing, we want to talk about auditions and live performances and some practices for that. So first off, why do we audition? It can definitely be a pretty nerve-wracking experience, but there are important reasons behind why we put ourselves in that situation. So we audition to display our talents and to access opportunities. Both auditions and performances can help us grow, can help us strengthen our love of music and our artistic expression. In these settings, we can reveal our strengths and weaknesses. So you might come away from an audition feeling like, wow, I really nailed this one part. So I know that like going forward, that's something that I really can get right. But you also might find out something that is a little difficult for you that you might not have realized in your practicing. It kind of comes out when you're in that situation with a little more pressure in front of a different audience. And we're always auditioning. This is something we were talking about the other day, is that no matter where you are, if you go out somewhere new, play with a different group, play with different people, you're kind of auditioning for that, because when they hear you sing, perform, play, they're kind of seeing what you're about. What do you do? How do you use your music and how do you perform? So that's why we audition. Kristalis, would you want to talk a little bit about showing your best self at an audition and some tips for that?
Yes, of course. So when I auditioned to Berklee, first of all, I picked a song I was very comfortable and I really liked, and it was actually a classical piece. It was by Mozart. And why I picked that, because as Jason mentioned before at the beginning of the session, I'm a mainly classical flute player. And I was like, you know what, this is the piece I feel most comfortable with, and I think I can definitely show my best abilities here and talent, so I'll just do this. And also I did solo jazz. I don't remember which one was, but you know, what I mean here is that we need to feel comfortable by playing and enjoy the moment that we're auditioning. And by that, then pick a song you like and feel comfortable playing it. It doesn't always have to be the most difficult or technically impressive, just that you're comfortable with the song. And also, I study a little bit what it's needed in the Berklee audition. Like, for example, the ear training part is very important. So I sat down with my dad and he helped me out, you know, in getting those intervals and getting my ear trained for the Berklee audition. It's not really that hard. It's just, you know, practicing and getting ready for that ear training part, and just like be really like study what the college needs. Like, as I said, for Berklee, we need the ear training and also a little bit of the sight reading. So that's what I did. That's how I prepare. I prepare my song, I prepare a solo piece, I prepare myself for the ear training part and for the sight reading part. And the best experience I got is that I play with confidence, and I very, very much enjoyed my experience. And same with when I auditioned to Boston Conservatory, it's a little bit different because I only had to play 3 pieces. I actually did 3 pieces that were my favorite, and I always wanted to play them. So I did. I had such a great experience. And yeah, I think just choose a song that you feel really comfortable in and that you think it will display a really good amount of abilities that you have.
Yeah, that's great. I think those are all some great tips. I've heard that you recently also got a scholarship from the Latin Grammy Cultural Foundation. Did you have to audition for that? Well, first of all, congrats. That's great.
Thank you so much.
You have to audition for that opportunity?
I did. I had to send a video. So I already had a video of myself playing a solo by Arturo Sandoval and Ed Calle that I actually transcribed myself. And I chose that because first it's a Latin Grammy scholarship, so it's Latin. So I wanted to display my Latin jazz style and how I play. So this is a really good point. You need to like get to the target. Like, okay, Berklee, what do you want to get from Berklee? So I did that for the Latin Grammy Cultural Foundation, and yes, I'm so happy I got it. And yeah.
That's great. Yeah, something that I think you touched on a bit, Kristalis, is just getting some feedback before you do your audition.
Yeah.
Whether it's an in-person audition or a video recorded audition. Those are both pretty different settings, but you can still get a different experience from both of those. So whether it's a family member, a friend, a teacher, just playing in front of somebody else can be so helpful. And just a little bit more about preparing for the audition. Practicing like you're actually doing the audition can be really helpful. So entering a room, sitting down, and then just playing through everything without stopping. Because you might not be doing that when you're practicing, but that's what you'd want to do for the audition. And that can really give you a different experience than what you're used to. Prepare warm-ups that you like to use before the audition that you're used to, and also perform the pieces as much as you can before the actual audition takes place. Jason or Kristalis, did you have anything else to add to these preparation tips?
I think one of the things, and we're going to touch on this in a minute, but we all get nervous when we play, especially when when you're playing in front of a large audience. It's one thing, right? Because the connection to the audience is very different. But when you're in a room with just a couple of people evaluating you, and they're being critical in evaluating your musical or vocal performance, your instrumental performance, it can kind of make you unsettled. So I think the idea of going through and really focusing on repetition and going through that piece of music or the different sections of the auditions as many times as you can, so that you know it so well that when you do go to do your audition, you're just really comfortable with that routine is a great idea.
Yeah, and Jason, I'm going to hand this next slide over to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that we tend to not think about when we audition is we practice usually in our space. Like I'm here in my practice studio at home. I practice in my office at Berklee. And so I'm familiar with those spaces. Sometimes it's really good to go to a different space and practice in a different room that you're unfamiliar with. The room itself will sound, feel, even smell different. And all of those things are going to make you feel a little bit different with the music that you're performing. If you're a pianist or a drum set player, an electric guitarist, an electric bassist, or you're going to be using equipment sometimes that's not your own. And so playing on different instruments regularly as part of your practice routine can be really, really helpful as well in ensuring that you have a level of comfort, sitting down at a different instrument, plugging into a different amplifier to dial up your sound, to get it as close to what, is comfortable for you, and then play your audition. And also just compromising and understanding that it's never going to be exactly the way you did it at home. And that's not the goal. The goal is really how you convey the music to the audience that you're playing for. And whether it's a judging panel or a big audience of people, the ultimate goal is to really convey that musical experience and to share your musical story. If you can kind of visualize that with what you're doing each time you practice in each of these different spaces, you might find that you'll take the edge of that nervousness and that discomfort off as you're going to do your audition. So really take a look at that. You know, drummers, pianists, and you know, electric instruments, keyboard players, go and play on different instruments. Vocalists, go and sing in different halls and different rooms. Wind players, string players, the resonance of the space is going to be different. So what you have to do is experiment a little bit and get comfortable with that. All right, here you go. Tips for dealing with nerves. Go ahead, Bree, let's dig into this.
Sure. Yeah, so sometimes even when you prepare as much as you can still get a little bit of nerves before one of these opportunities like an audition or a performance. And that's totally normal. And I think it happens to almost everyone, no matter how long you've been playing, or no matter if you're a professional with tons of experience. So some thoughts that we'd have is it can be helpful to determine a routine before the audition or the performance that works for you, that helps you remain calm and helps you get in the headspace to focus for that performance or audition. So I think Jason kind of talked about this a little bit, but maybe taking deep breaths, visualizing the outcome in a positive way, walking in with confidence, just feeling like even though you might not feel the most prepared, at least on the outside, showing that you're ready for this opportunity, because how you also appear is a huge part of the audition, whether you appear confident. Kristalis, did you have anything else to add to this? I think we had been talking about this quite a bit this week.
Yeah. Well, on the deep breaths, I always do this before a performance, before an audition. I think it helps me to calm down because I'm usually like, oh my God, okay, so I need to play this piece, or I'm auditioning for an orchestra or for a college. So I like to take deep breaths, and I also like to stretch. Again, I feel like my body gets really tense. So I think that stretching and really focus my body into like, okay, it's time to relax, everything's going to be fine, helps me a lot.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, I think that nervous energy is always a challenging thing to overcome. What I try to do is the visualization piece. You know, I remember starting out playing music and just seeing bands play and being so inspired by musicians being able to get up in front of audiences and perform that I just go back to that idea of like, I get to share some music with these people. And that's the thing that kind of helps me get centered is what is the song, what is the piece of music I'm going to play, and how can I do my best in conveying that story? It may not be immaculate technically, but if I can have a really great musical moment, then I've accomplished my goal. If I can convey that in the audition, I think the audience is always, no matter whether they're judges or a live audience, they're always forgiving about the small little blemishes of imperfection. If you've touched them with your music, with the intensity of a really quick piece of music, a fast tempo piece or a ballad or a sad piece or a happy upbeat piece, no matter what that is, if you can try and convey that and get them to connect with you musically, then you've reached your goal, you know, and I think that helps me get centered with the audition and helping to shake off those nerves.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that mindset, just really thinking like, this is for me to make music ultimately. Maybe I make a mistake, maybe I don't get the audition, but I got to make music, and that's kind of what we're all here for. So we want to offer a couple resources for auditioning and performance preparation. So I think somebody had asked about practicing improv and kind of practicing with a track. We have some resources for that. That would be this first link. So there's some audio exercises from Berklee and also some lead sheets that you can take a look at and kind of try practicing with. And then there's a worksheet in the second link, just preparing a tune for performance and a step-by-step guide for maybe some tips that would help with that process. So again, you can scan either of these with your phone's camera and it should take you right to either of those links. Definitely recommend scanning, saving those, and taking a look at them. So I think now we have some more time for any questions folks might have about even practicing, if there's any more, or about auditioning, performing, and preparing for that.
Yeah, Isabella put a great question in the chat about songwriters and how songwriters audition. And this is really a very current question because lots of people are writing their own music. When you're a songwriter or a composer and you have the opportunity to perform an original piece of music in an audition, it's actually really cool because you get to not only show your musical skill, whether it's on an instrument or your voice, but also your compositional and songwriting skills and your lyric writing skills. So what you're going to do is bring all of this information into the audition to share with everybody. So Isabella, if you're a vocalist and a pianist or a vocalist and a guitarist, or you're using a backing track that you've produced, at least at Berklee, we're super excited because we get to see all of this. We get to hear you perform and showcase your technical ability as a vocalist or on your instrument. We get to hear your skill with harmony, with song form, with groove and rhythm, how you bring all these elements together to tell your story with the lyric. And we're listening to the lyrics to see your level of skill with creating a story with the words and the ideas that you put together. So at least for a Berklee audition, I can say we're listening and looking at all of these elements as we evaluate the audition to tell us a more complete holistic picture of who you are as a musician. What other questions do people have about preparing for an audition? Or, Gap, obviously you do lots of auditions for the Yamaha group there in Bangkok, in Thailand. Do you have any thoughts on auditions?
In my opinion, I think the important thing about the audition, it's gonna be like the song you choose. If you have like 10 months to do the audition, you have to play this song like million times. That's why you have to choose your right song and a song you love it. It make you you like to practice it, and you do exercise with the songs many times with not boring.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Cool. Thank you, Gap.
Some people choose very difficult songs for them, and they play like 2 or 5 times. It make them boring, and it's not good. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Cool. And this actually goes to Abigail's question in the chat about like the Berklee auditions. Do we look for originality or authenticity over difficulty? I think Abigail and Bree and Kristalis, please jump in here. What we're looking for is your ability to tell a musical story and to demonstrate the different aspects of your musicianship in the audition. So just because the piece might seem simple technically, it doesn't mean that it's easy. Sometimes doing the most simple of song is really difficult to convey it musically. And conversely, playing a piece that's technically really challenging may not convey, your overall musicianship. So what Gap just said is actually really true. We're trying to hear what it is that you want to tell us musically about who you are, at least from the Berklee audition. The way I tell people is, if I were to come to your concert tonight, and we're going to come out and hear you perform live at a show, what's the song that you would maybe start the concert off with? Because that would be maybe one song that would be an audition song that you'd like to use. Or when you put your set together, there's always that song that's at the very peak of your set, like the big climax. Maybe that's the song that you choose. That's like the showstopper, as we say, that you're trying to really get the audience up on their feet or really kind of like connect with the audience in a certain way. It's very likely that those two songs are songs that you really, really love and enjoy playing, and they showcase the very best of all of your musical abilities, your technical ability, your musicianship, your phrasing, your all those wonderful things that you're trying to convey. That's the thing that I recommend when people come to do a Berklee audition, at least, is that's the song. If you're going to pick one, pick the one that's really going to be that's going to draw the audience's attention to your overall musicianship. Bree and Kristalis, how do you pick pieces when you go to do your auditions?
Yeah, I think that that's some really good advice, Jason. Even in a classical setting, you still, as much as you can, want to pick a piece that you really enjoy playing, whether it's like a solo piece, a sonata, a technical piece. I would also echo what Jason said about choosing a piece that is the right difficulty for you, that you can still feel really comfortable preparing it. But when you get nerves on the day of the audition, you can still handle it and manage that.
Yeah, I feel the same as Brie. For my Boston Conservatory audition, I did 3 pieces. They were very different because one was for like very technical stuff, and it was hard, but I knew that I could do it. And if I get nervous, I can do it because it's really important. Because okay, yeah, I'm gonna do the difficult piece, but then when I'm getting nervous, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then the second one was more like for sound, like more for intonation, more like a ballad, more, you know. And yeah, I feel like, picking a song that you really feel comfortable and connected with, and that you think you're gonna do well in it. It's good.
Yeah, and it looks like Brooke had a question that kind of lines up with what you were saying, Kristalis, which is, should they just prepare one piece, say, for the Berklee audition, or multiple pieces? And my recommendation is, no matter what, we should always have a few pieces that we're ready to play at any point in time. You should always have a couple of pieces that are ready to perform, and they should be different in tempo, in key signature, in vibe. Like if you're going to play an up-tempo piece or a ballad or a somber piece or like a really happy piece, it's always good to have a couple of songs ready or pieces of music ready to play at any moment, because that's what we do. We're musicians. We're supposed to be ready to perform.
Yeah.
In the Berklee audition, Brooke, what I would recommend is when you come into the audition, as we said earlier, come in with confidence, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm, if you're allowed, in the Berklee auditions, you can, hi, I'm Brooke, and I'm so happy to be here to perform for you. The teachers are going to, get your information and make sure they're ready to audition. Say, they're going to ask you, what would you like to play? And say, listen, I really thought hard about this, and I do lots of different things musically. So what I did is, in the time period that I'm allowed, I've really prepared 2 different contrasting pieces of music that are going to fit within the time period. They are this, and I'd like to start with this piece, and I'd like to finish with this piece. And that way, you're kind of driving the conversation in the audition, in focus, that you kind of envisioned what your audition is going to be like. And that way, you've already set yourself up. You have a vision. You're confident. You've prepared these 2 pieces of music, and you're going to do this first piece and this second piece. One could be an original, one could be from a well-known artist or composer. If you're a Western classically trained musician, you might do this one. And if you do a modern piece of music or an original piece of music that's in a different style, you can give something that's contrasting. But I think having that plan is really, really good. And I think that helps to answer James's question in there as well. So having a focused plan is a great way to prepare as you go forward into your audition. Bree and Kristalis, how does that sound to you?
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool. I have a question from Mohammed. He's asking about, these longer technical pieces that say sometimes guitarists and drummers will play, like a Dream Theater piece, the instrumental rock stuff, the really big pieces. And, Bree and Kristalis, when you're listening to an audition or you're listening to a student and a musician, how much time in a piece of music needs to go by before you have a really good sense of the person's musical ability, do you think? You ever thought about that?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I feel like I experience that when I get a new student and I'm trying to see where they're at. So depending on what they play, I feel like that can be anywhere from like a minute to, yeah, even just within like a minute or two, I feel like you can kind of get a sense of like what the person's bringing to the table.
How about you, Kristalis? Does that sound familiar, similar?
Yeah, it does. The same as Rick. Yeah.
So when you come in to do an audition, ladies and gentlemen, usually within the first minute, the audition team will have a very, very good sense of your technical ability based on the piece of music that you've chosen. If you've written a piece of music or you're going to play a piece of music that's got a 3-minute introduction and you're trying to set the vibe and the ambiance, that might not be a really good piece of music to perform in an audition. You kind of need to pick the piece of the music or a piece of music that really gets to the focus of what you're trying to share in that limited amount of time. And I think if we were to ask this question of all of you, when you listen to new music, you probably make an opinion of what you're listening to rather quickly and whether or not you're going to stay interested and continue listening to the rest of the piece of music or not within the first minute or so. You give it a chance, you see where it's going, but this is something to really consider in the selection. So if you're going to do a piece of music that's very lengthy, you might want to trim it down. Mohammed also asked about genre. Should he play one style or another style? What style should you do for your audition? In the case of a Berklee College of Music audition, we are stylistically agnostic. Our school does not teach one style of music. We teach pretty much everything, and we're open to everything. And so, I think you really need to bring your music to us that you want to showcase the best of your musicianship on your voice or instrument. So that's a really, really important thing. Don't come into your audition and say, I think this is what the audition group at Berklee wants to hear me play. Come into your audition and say, this is the piece of music that I want to play for the Berklee people. And that's what our audition guidelines on our website say. Now, Kristalis and Bree, you've both been at Berklee and the Boston Conservatory. Sometimes there are auditions where you have to play something that's been, you've been required to play, correct? How do you approach that?
That's great.
If you have like a select repertoire that you have to pick, how do you decide what to do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for the audition for the orchestra, it was mainly like, okay, I had to like play it. I had to play like a contemporary piece that I've never done it before. So I just sat down with the teacher. I actually looked up the teacher I wanted to study with at Boston Conservatory. So I wanted to meet her, and I think it was a good opportunity for me to meet her and for her to meet me and know my needs. And then she helped me a lot with this contemporary piece.
Great.
So,
how about you, Bree? How do you approach it when you have a list of pieces that you have to pick from?
Yeah, great question. I would say, like Kristalis said, it's very common for an orchestra audition to have requirements very specific like that. So I would say whether it's something I know or whether it's a new piece for me, definitely listening is my first step. And then sitting down with the music. If there's maybe 5 options and they want us to pick 2, then I would listen through and see which one would I feel the most confident playing, what is the best reflective of my skill level, and what would I like to bring into the room and feel like would make me stand out. So yeah, just really listening and just looking through the music and deciding that way.
Wonderful. Great. Matthew had a question about the difficulty of sight reading, and I can share from Berklee's perspective. And Matthew, I'm not sure what your instrument is, But the sight reading examples that Berklee has are leveled. We have usually for each instrument, there's about, between 6 and 8 levels of sight reading that we have for your instrument. And we start off with, honestly, reading half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes in a 4 to 8 measure bar phrase, to getting more difficult level of complexity with adding 16th notes, compound rhythms, syncopation, intervals to the melodies. If you are a chord instrument, like a pianist or a guitarist, we're going to ask you to read chord changes, and we'll start with like typical bar chords and open chords, and then we'll add sevenths and ninths to see what your knowledge is of those chord shapes and of your chord vocabulary. And we'll put the styles, bossa nova, swing, funk, blues, rock. The Berklee audition specifically, it's very, very interesting. The prepared piece, the improvisation section, the sight reading, and the ear training are all things that we have to do every time we show up at a rehearsal, a recording session, or live performance. You're probably going to have something prepared. It's very likely that you're going to need to do some improvising in many of the Berklee performances. You're going to need to use your ears melodically, harmonically, and rhythmically to hear where you are. And you're going to need to read. So the Berklee audition is a very functional audition. It's for functional musicianship so that you can show up to a live situation and play. So with the reading examples, again, if you don't have this as part of your practice routine, and we talked about this earlier, sometime in your practice schedule, whether it's every day or a couple of times a week, be sure to do some reading. For chordal instruments, you got to read chords. For piano and guitar, you got to be able to read melodies. For drum set players and percussionists, you got to be able to read grooves and play different styles. And for drum set players, obviously, you need to be able to do rudiments. So you have to do rudimental reading as well, like if you were going to play in a marching band or a concert band or an orchestra. So all of these things should be part of your skill set in your practice. And Grace has a question here about, will chord progressions and the key of the music during the improv, will we share that information? Absolutely. In the Berklee audition, we're your biggest fans. We want you to succeed. We want to hear the best of what you're doing musically. So we're going to do our best to try and find a place of comfort when it comes to improvisation. If you've learned how to improvise, then we'll do something that's familiar. It doesn't have to be jazz. It could be rock. It could be funk. It could be R&B. It could be any style. We can play along with you and jam out and get a chance to hear what your ability is as a vocal improviser, as an instrumental improviser, or as a drum set player. If you are a musician who has a different tradition that you've come from, Western classical tradition or Middle Eastern tradition or some indigenous traditions, we're going to work with you to see like, well, let's try and create a song together. Sometimes we have songwriters that come in that have never studied improvisation. And so we'll just write a song together in the spot, like we're hanging out and doing a co-writing session. What improvisation is, as Kristalis and Bree both noted before, it's composition. All it is spontaneous composition. So it's really your ability to create a musical story in the moment. And the genre that we end up improvising in will kind of help dictate what that story will be like. In jazz vocabulary and blues vocabulary, there's a certain kind of story. If you're a songwriter, it's certain kinds of stories. So these are kinds of things that you need to be aware of. I see that we're moving on, so we're running out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been awesome. Bree, Kristalis, we've had a blast. I think we did a really fine job covering 2 really complex topics today. And I'm really excited that Gap was able to join us from Siam Music Yamaha. We're really looking forward to being with him on December 2nd and being with him for a few days in Bangkok. And we've got some really, really cool stuff that we're going to be doing together. For those of you that are traveling to come and meet us in Bangkok, I know Daniel put the link in there to apply. If you want to come and apply and do your audition for us while we're there, please come and meet us in person. We have another session coming up with Professor Kevin Harris. If you haven't checked out Kevin Harris, you need to go to his website. He is an incredible artist, educator, pianist, composer, and just a beautiful human being. So scan this code. And those of you that are on our mailing list, we're going to send you an invitation to come and join us on the next session on November 19th. Kevin's going to do a session on creative approaches to songwriting and composition. And what he's going to be doing is preparing you to bring your music into the session that we're going to do in Bangkok at the Yamaha headquarters, because we want you to write some music and bring it to us and play it for us live. And that way we're going to hang out with you in Bangkok and do some music together. So super excited about that. And we look forward to having you join us.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention one more thing. If you didn't get a chance to ask us a question, or maybe if you want to do it in a smaller environment, we do have Ask Global Initiative sessions about once a week or every 2 weeks. The next one we have is coming up Monday, November 7th, in just a couple days. I'll be there, Daniel will be there. So basically that's a time when anyone can just join, register for the Zoom and ask us questions. We'd be happy to talk more about anything from today's session, or to talk about Berklee, how to apply, how to audition, how to come from one of the global partner schools. So yeah, hopefully we can see you at one of those sessions, or November 19th, like Jason just said.
Cool. Very much. Thank you very much, Bree, for sharing that follow-up, and Kristalis and Daniel and Gap and Volt and everybody at Siam Yamaha for helping us with this session. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been great. Wherever you are in the world, have a nice morning, afternoon, or evening. Be sure to connect with us online. And, we're here. We're here to help you. Like we said, we're your biggest fans. We want you to succeed and have a great musical life and experience. That's what Berklee does. So we look forward to seeing you soon, and wishing you all the very best. Thanks, everybody.